Hi, everybody. It's a beautiful evening, apparently. Pretty dark out there. I think this is we'll have another uh, webcast next Thursday, but this is the last one before uh, Christmas, I guess you might call it. And I think tonight we'll do something slightly different. We'll have a little bit longer meditation and a little shorter talk, maybe. Uh, you know, some of you sometimes have been wondering just exactly what these very able people have in common with respect to a higher link with that those higher states. And I'll try to talk a little bit about that um, because there's all kinds of words you can use, sages, masters, all kinds of things like that. And this kind of a relationship that they have is really not the same kind of relationship that some folks have as spiritual persons that are significant in our world. But there is a link there. Usually in the East, and usually a lot of this stuff comes from the East or Middle East, the idea of engaging with higher states is a complicated one. Often considered very simple uh, from some people's point of view, but very complicated. Normally, from our point of view, we look at personality traits and how they are and how they should be and whatever that may be. And that's, of course, pardon me, I have something in my eye. I'm not sure what it is. Um, that is normally related to uh, these coarser levels and how a person should be, rules and regulations of how a person should be before they can really, truly link up deeply with higher states. And that usually is related to, as I said, personality traits fundamentally. It has not a lot to do with that. It's lovely to have good people, and often good people are there for reasons that maybe we don't understand as easily as we think we do. But nothing wrong with good folks. It has more to do with energy and their capacity to handle energy in a form, a personality form, that is legitimately developed on these planes, but also fused in a kind of a sense with higher states. And that means their physical, emotional, and mental systems, even though they're not separate, have higher aspects within them. And those higher aspects are usually related to an overall general attempt to help our species to become, let's say, directed towards understanding that there are higher states there to engage with. And this shows up in almost every version of life. In art, it shows up in science, it shows up in just normal folk. It shows up in any engagement that we may have that we feel culturally valuable, whatever that may be. Also, shows up in areas that we don't think are culturally valuable. And it does that to cover each and every individual who might, as they are alive here, might be called a part of the species. That includes everybody. This is hard for us to handle because normally our rules and regulations don't go in that direction. It means if you are good at this and good at that and good at that, you must be partly involved with another state. And you may be. That's the fundamental strangeness of it all. And you may even use that, let's say, a little bit higher level for the purpose of engaging and elevating your personality. But we're talking about masters here, and we're talking about capability of sages. When these energies come together in an individual, they come together on various levels. Meaning, as I've often talked about, that root center of ours can be glowing on every level related to it. In other words, within itself, there is a capacity to engage with higher states. From some people's point of view, that's a low chakra, so it can't be worth anything. Not from the view of everyone, but some. The gonad center. First of all, we think about sexuality. It can be linked up to a very high level, and sexuality is never even thought of. It's normally internalized will, the will to go beyond what these coarser levels consider valuable. And that when I talk about valuable, normally it's we do a little bit of a pyramidal thing. Who's ever at the top of something is more valuable than those at the bottom. It doesn't work like that for higher states. But what tends to happen, the same with the solar plexus, by the way, or emotional centers. If you are completely open at a level where softness begins to engage with you, even though you have the capacity to be not so soft, then from some people's point of view, that's considered to be a weakness. You're not using your powers for a purpose. Well, you are, but that doesn't make any sense to those folks. So it is considered then that if you were well known, you must be important. Some of the masters that I've been fortunate enough to meet, sages, have no interest in being known at all. For just a minute. That would not make sense in our regulations, the regulations of a spiritual being. So therefore, we're still in a process of attempting to understand what that means. Legitimately. Because we like to understand stuff. And that's important. Well, then we consider things like, if I were that kind of a person, this is what I would do. That's not a higher state being. That's a normal state being. And there's nothing wrong about that. It's just normal state stuff. Coarser level function. And we're all a part of that. As these beings begin to link up and fuse two levels together, the personality becomes literally a tool for a higher state. Now, what does that mean? It means you're able to function and do all the things you normally function with, but there is a link with higher states that relate directly to attempting to help the lower states. Interesting. Sounds about a bit Buddhist in a way, because they keep incarnating to try to help humanity to become more functional. At least that's the one version. I think that's an interesting version, personally, but many of us may not want to incarnate back here again for many reasons that we can, on the side, talk about to ourselves about, maybe I don't want to come back here, this kind of thing. The issue in this hasn't got anything to do with what the personality wants. This is the dilemma of being an able being for the purpose of a higher state, not the purpose of our own way of engaging. This is makes us feel very vulnerable. So some of these very able beings have a reflex to come back, if indeed you can handle reincarnation. Now, they're not coming back because they're bad people, so they have to engage here again. But they may be coming back because of the great need that our species has to see life from a different perspective, as well as the one that we already do. To begin to journey forward, as opposed to only engaging with ideas that we believe might make us more spiritual. It's very interesting. And of course, that doesn't sit well with everybody. And you're absolutely right, if you feel that way, not to have it sit well with you, right from your perspective, but just another way to look at things. To be able to handle the softness of loving, where you don't have loving on the coarser side of you, unless it validates you somehow, which is normal interaction with life. You've all experienced that one, as we all have. Then, in a kind of a way, we're still growing to the point where we can recognize that softness in us, engaging in a manner that helps us to understand that maybe we could allow it to be there and therefore soften down in our most critical moments. Well, if you do that, then you start to begin to be aware of how you actually engage in life. This causes a problem, because you're held in two positions. You experience one aspect of that, and that creates value for you based on how that coarser side of our normal life thinks that the personality is the valuable thing, where in truth it's a construction, a form that was constructed by us and our parental background for a purpose of, at least this is one way to survive in this world. It might only be considered to be the only way if it seems to work for you in some manner. But those higher states don't think like this. These beings have been experientially engaged with an understanding that deepens within them and allows them to be willing to go beyond the tool that has been constructed within their environment. In other words, their own personality structure. And that's an energy form, of course, as we all know. Or at least we're trying to find out. That energy form, since it is an energy form, can be affected and softened. But there has to be room for that to happen. And the personality sometimes doesn't allow that room to occur very well. I say that very generously because all of us are human beings, and we like to keep our nomenclature here, our name tag, legitimately there for the purposes that we believe it needs to be there for. And that is the difference between higher state engagement and coarser engagement. At higher states, that's not talked about by those beings. At lower states, it's often talked about individually, about the value of how they function or need to be, all the rest of it. The impact of a higher state being is extremely enabling. It increases your awareness. It allows you to actually be an individual who's attempting to understand themselves. To come face to face with the exact opposite that is constructed within the personality. Both of them are. Meaning, constructed this way, this is how one can be, and then a kind of rebellious aspect within there. I am going to be my way. Never am I going to be the way of my parental background. It just doesn't work like that. Your parental background shows up in your life. Both parents. Aspects, some good, some not so pretty. But that's normal here. Within that engagement with higher states, that becomes something that touches you every day of your life. But there's a shift. You suddenly notice that this is how you are, but you don't have to defend it and you don't have to attack it. This is very hard for us to make sense of. Yet, from that different perspective, you learn how to watch energy operating through you for a purpose related to something beyond your understanding, but you recognize that it's occurring. It's experiential. Meaning, you're living in an engagement with a different level of function. It doesn't mean that you don't function the way you have been, but it does mean every time you do, you see it as a reality instead of you're not supporting it by saying, oh yeah, well, but in this case, it was exactly right. Okay, that sounds negative, but it's not. It gets to be something simple, like, oh my goodness, I never saw that one before. Oh, okay. Rather than beating up on it, you're noticing as if you're learning something. This happens physically. This happens emotionally. because you're guarded. Everyone is strongly emotionally, and that includes how you think things through from an emotional perspective or a being right perspective. And eventually a link up with a level of mind that is different than what you're used to. A level of emotion that is different than what you're used to. A level of engagement with the physical that is different than what you're used to. Learning in small steps. Beginning slowly to recognize there's something broader than how you see the world. This is easily talked about, but the experience of it, totally different. It makes you feel more vulnerable. These master able beings are able to handle that. And it's very difficult. If they come in and have to learn how to do that, it's as difficult as anyone else engaging from these coarser states, perhaps. And they live life, and they engage with life. Not perfectly, just as they can. But they find out within them, through experience, that there is something other than how they always thought things were. And this is how we at these levels begin to grow. At their level, they're already there. And they're really trying to be helpful, yet not only through the elevation of their own personality. So we have a little ways to go yet, one could say. But here's the thing about that. That little ways to go is very, very important. That experience through which we grow is exceedingly valuable in that it begins to enable others almost reflexively in our species to begin to do the same thing. And it shows up. At least in the beginning, the words do. Then later, the living it begins to occur. And the living it is the harder part. Because with that comes the tale behind us of our upbringing. And that's stuff you can't see very well. I'm talking about us now, growing. And because we can't see it very well, we know it's not there. Or we believe it might not be there. And slowly we begin to notice it just a bit, little at a time. And we need to have compassion for that. Otherwise, we become so defensive, we can hardly even do anything without being defensive. Everything sounds like it's attacking us in a kind of a way, but it's really not an attack at all. It's things are showing up and it's hard to see. As a growing person, you will experience that. As a growing person, our hope is to be as loving and kind and compassionate with ourselves. And in doing so, begin to learn how to be that way with others. This is a tough one, because at these levels, we tend to make up our minds about things rather quickly and distinctly and hold that. So therefore, the other person cannot change in your eyes. You can't change in your eyes. Not real. but it is a way of thinking, way of living that relates to these planes. But remember, if a higher state can operate through you, gently, slowly, and you can be comfortable with that caring that goes with it, then you are really helping all of those beings who have difficulty engaging with that loving aspect, compassionate aspect, caring aspect, kind aspect, which is they're linked together. Not only when you're face to face, but when you're engaged in life. So these higher beings are like that, but they don't bring attention to themselves because they know that if they do that, they will begin to engage like a person who's on these kosher levels, and it's hard for them. So being a very able being has a distinctly difficult time with the influences in the planes that they live. But they are, and have been, to the best of the ability that they can, they have been kind of trained to do that through experience. They do not communicate like we do. They communicate energetically, purposefully, to enable others, not to rip them down like we've been taught, not to beat them up like we've been taught, not to judge them like some of us have been taught. And judgment then becomes a handicap. And we don't know that. And we're kind of disappointed because we can do that pretty well. We've been doing that for a long time. Because we've been trained to do so. No offense to anybody or anybody's background. It's just what happens in our world. We are originally trained to try and get into a state that will help us to survive on these planes. And our parents have tried to help us in that. From their perspective, depending on their training. Of course, I agree. But nonetheless, they're doing it the way they think they have to. But you're an adult now. And slowly, we can try to do something slightly different. You can change the pattern. Meditation helps. There isn't any doubt about it. And there are many diverse ways of doing that. And we get bored easily. If we think we know something, we don't want to do that thing anymore. Because we know it now. It's not how that works, but anyway, it's how we work it. Whatever method that you find comforting, do it. And don't listen to yourself. Continue to do it. Try to be helpful to you in the best way that you can. Be on your side, your growing side, as opposed to your self-protective side. You will have to use your self-protective side from time to time because you won't be able to do anything else. That's your training. And also, there is a practicality about things of this nature. Somebody throws a harpoon at you, you better move quickly to get out of the way. But about these other beings, they do enter into our levels so that they can put forward an idea that if they can do this, you can too. You are the reason why they come. And that's a very interesting thing. Why would they really come here when they don't have to? To help out. It must be that our species, in its own way, is considered valuable, regardless of what you hear and see, and what you come up with personally. And not because of what you did or do, but more because you're able to handle a little bit of that flow on these levels, and they come in to try and help you to handle more. And that flow becomes softer and gentler and more loving. That's where we find a hard time dealing with it. In our early stages, for sure, because our trust levels are not very high. As an adult, we attempt the best we can to be as functional as we can. And that means we're not perfect. We don't perfectly engage with these planes because we don't know what it is. We have our parameters related to our constitutional structures. But our versions of how to deal with energy and how to engage with those higher states, not very much written about that. Some written that are directly related to rules and regulations that we believe must be true based on what we think about others who have apparently done fairly well in a spiritual line. And we usually try to understand that through our coarser levels. We don't see those things as metaphors at all, because we can't do that very well yet. It's not our fault. It's how we normally make sense of things, and we're learning more. We have a terrible time being respectful to others who are growing. We pull out all kinds of stops and devaluing or valuing certain things, and this is the way it should be, and all the rest of it. It isn't how it works on higher states. It's how it works here. Understanding through experience is one of the ways that are extremely important to us, and we are just learning slowly in that. But we use it a lot. If we see if someone does something that we disagree with, we automatically, our experience is that character is not very this or very that. Or people slip up and make statements that are, let's say, less brighter or less lighter than what should be made. Accordingly, they are discussed as not very this or not very that. It's the method that we use when we're living life. It's difficult to understand that higher states look at that as if it's just, that's how it is here. And this is the level of function that they're capable of being on right now. But later, things may change, or shifts may occur. Or not, but they still have the potential to engage with higher states, no matter what. And that's a key, that last part. And they continue and continue and continue to attempt to be helpful energetically to levels of energetic function that we are quite compatible with and comfortable in. Because it's been like that for a long time. And it's part of our growing process and part of the nature of us. It's probably a little bit difficult to imagine that a being a mile and a half away from us can perceive us walking down a street. And if they noticed an area within them of you, because you showed up in them, they could help you from that distance only by having you in their mind for a nanosecond. Energy would operate through them, not from them, through them, directly to the area that you might need help in. When I say that, I'm talking about, of course, Zephyroth or the chakras. Those things are considered to be a theory by many people. And there's a lot to be said about them by all kinds of people. But once you begin to know and experience them, there's no theory about it. You begin to realize that there is a fundamental engagement with states through them. And you use that energy in your life to engage with living all the time. But until you cannot experience that, at least a little bit, it's hard to understand that that could be possible. Because the focus of everything that we do is related to the expression of our personalizations and the value we place on the images that we've constructed, automatically, reflexively, or on purpose, that we sit in and we engage with, and that people think we are about because we have told them that that's what you're about. This kind of thing, which is kind of normal in our world. I'd like to leave you with the idea that potentially the softening of an engagement with higher states is different than the recognition and perception of levels that are closer to these coarser planes. I'd like to leave you also with the idea that neither one is either bad, good, right, or wrong. Just is where we are. Then perceiving that, allowing you to understand that you can experientially move past those levels while even not wanting to is part of our future development and our future potential. Each one has the potential to be and do whatever might be helpful to the encouragement of linking with higher states. I think what we'll do now is we'll begin to meditate. I wish everybody, and of course Marlene and I both wish everybody a very pleasant Christmas time. Hanukkah is just over. I hope all went well there. And a really wonderful 2024. Take care, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.
ec in principium in die virtutis tuae, in splendoribus sanctorum, ex ut cielo monte luciferum celum Isir Dominus Dominum erat, sede ad exis melius, Iesu dulcis memoria. Dans vera coris Galia, sed super mere omnia, eius dulcis presentia. Iesu dulcis memoria. Dans vera coris Galia, sed super melet omnia, eius dulcis presentia. Nil canitur suavium, nil auditur cantium, nil cogitatur dulcium, quam Iesus Dei Filius. Nil canitus suavius, nil auditur jucundius, nil cogitatur dulcius, quam Iesus Dei Filius. Iesus est venire vivus, quam pius est petendibus, quam manus sequendibus, sed quid invenientibus. Iesus est penitentibus, quam pius est petentibus, quam bonus sequendentibus, sed quid invenientibus. Nec lingua valedice, nec litera exprimere, expertus potes credere, visit Iesu diligere. Nec lingua valedice, nec litera exprimere, expertus potes credere, visit Iesu diligere. Sis Iesu nos gaudium, Adorote devote, latem seiutas, que subis figuris vere latitas, tibi secor merum, totum subjici, quia te contemplans, totum deficit.
Visus tactus gustus in te fallitur, sed audi
And now we'll just do the balancing and grounding. And once again, I wish everyone well. Have a good festive season.